Hello and welcome to the Chess Pit, the podcast where three guys plus one talk about chess occasionally, because we are very lucky to have a special guest today joining me, Phil, and Robin, who you know, they don't need introduction. They get enough time to talk as it is, but we're excited to be able to have David Vizgan on, who is the host of 64 a Chess podcast. David, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. You guys can hear me well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep, it's a great pleasure having you on. Shame that I guess this rest day has sort of fallen at a point where there isn't a huge amount to talk about in terms of the future of this match. But let's just start off by talking about how you've enjoyed the World Championship so far, like what you've made of it. What's your general take on how the match unfolded?
Yeah, so this is my second World Championship that I've ever followed. I mean, I guess I was aware of Magnus back in 2016 when it was in New York. So I was aware that there was a World Championship in New York back then. I was in junior year of high school, I think. So I was aware of it, but this is really the second one that I've actually followed. And I think it's been really amazing to see, like, first of all, how many people are interested in chess. I think that's been really cool. I've had a lot of friends, and people know that I do chess podcasting, and I have a lot of friends texting me or messaging me on Instagram being like, oh, what's the deal with this Magnus guy? What's the match situation? That was not happening 3 years ago. So that's already made it kind of special. Although I do agree that it's kind of over, and it's kind of anticlimactic at this point. And but yeah, I mean, in general, I've really enjoyed it. It's been nice, when I'm at work, just to have the games on in the background and hear Fabiano talk about chess and stuff. And I mean, Game 6 was the best chess game I've ever watched live. I would go as far to say it's maybe top 3 sporting things. I don't know if you guys consider chess a sport, but that was maybe the single most impressive performance I've seen in a sporting event, except maybe when Kevin Durant had 50 in the playoffs last year. That was that was an insane game. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Can confirm KD was very good.
Yeah, that was a freaking shame, man, that we couldn't win that series.
You a Nets fan?
I'm a Nets fan. I'm from Brooklyn, so I've been a diehard Nets fan since they came. Well before all the bandwagoners. We have a lot of international bandwagoners now, but I was supporting them back in the dark days with Jorge Gutierrez and Egidijus Makavicius and all Chase Budinger. Most people don't even know these names, but
yeah, they sound like wrestlers.
Franchise leading scorer Brook Lopez.
Yeah, not for long though. KD will pass that, I hope.
I know Brooklyn really well, actually. I have some friends who used to live in Bushwick who I stayed with a few times and stuff. So it's great.
But I'm not from cool. Yeah, I'm not from cool Bushwick. I'm from South Brooklyn, which is it's a lot. It's just a very different place to put it mildly. I love it though. Yeah. Got its own flair.
Let's talk a little bit about your podcast before we get into things. How long have you been running your podcast now? So it's not been going for a huge amount of time, right?
Yeah, I started in March. Actually, basketball is good because I was doing, when the pandemic started, my brother, who's even bigger basketball fan than me, he kind of was like, we should do a basketball podcast together because pandemic, everyone started getting into podcasting because people were holed up. Couples are getting into podcasting, siblings are getting into podcasting, friend groups and college frat houses were everybody was making a podcast. So we were like, whatever, we'll make a basketball podcast, and it was called Getting Buckets. It's pretty funny even a year later to look back and but just to see what I was thinking about the sports and stuff. But I got a lot of experience. I made the theme song, I made the cover art, basically all the stuff that I do now for my podcast. So I got a lot of experience, and then a couple of friends joined on, and then I kind of, not to shame my friends and brother, who I love very much. Come to visit me here in a couple of weeks.
Do it.
But I will, yeah, because I was doing I think 95% of the work, and so then I was like, well, why don't I just start my own podcast? And then I was like, but what would it be on? And then I was like, well, I like chess, so I could just make it about chess. And I'd been listening to the Perpetual Chess podcast every now and then. And so that was kind of my model, just to kind of do interviews with people that I wanted to talk to in the chess world. So that's why I started it, just so I could talk to people. And since then, I've had a lot more growth than I kind of expected. I didn't think I would do it for this long, but then I had a couple of big interviews that just gave me some attention. And now I'm really happy about where I am at the end of the year. And I hope I can keep growing and doing cool things. So
you've just put out an episode on with Greg Shahadi.
Yeah. Yeah, that came out yesterday. We recorded that 2 days ago. I mean, he told me like he's very flexible, but I had to. So I basically he told me like just find some time late in the night for you that works. So it was like 11 p.m. here. I've never recorded an episode that late, but it was a great chat. We talked for like 2 hours, and it was awesome. I loved it. So.
And what's your experience of the chess podcasting world been like? Have you found it as a phenomenon? Because as you say, you started back in March, and we've been going for how long have we been going for? About a year.
What? We started in January 2020. Nearly hitting 2 years.
Pandemic time has just passed me, made time pass by for me. But it's still I would say, very sparse space. There's not a huge amount of people putting out podcasts in particular. You mentioned the OG, Ben Johnson, has been doing it. What's your experience been of sort of covering chess in a podcasting sense?
That's a great question. First of all, I want to say I think you guys have the best logo in the chess podosphere, and it's like not close. It's like mine is horrible. Like I need somebody to make a new one for me. I mean, my friend made the one for me, and it's good like for what it is. But I kind of want like a logo that is like it's not horrible. I think my logo's fine, but I feel like I'm just not talented enough to make the one that I see in my head, and I don't want to really hire anybody. So.
Add your friend to your brother as the list of people you're shaming for their
I'm
contributions
shaming everyone.
to the podcast.
Shaming everyone.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell us about how your parents have hindered your podcasting career.
Yeah.
Not one of those. Put you on a chaise long. This is turning into like a therapy session for all the people who've wronged David.
Yeah, the list goes on forever. So no, I mean, in all honesty, I was very surprised. Chess has a reputation for being like elitist. And so I would kind of thought it was going to be a snobby space, but I've noticed. I'll tell you what. I've noticed two things. First of all, I actually think the kind of content I do, maybe just because Ben is so good at what he does, and he's just the GOAT. Simply is the GOAT. Like just. So I think that it's been like hard for me to kind of offer something new in that sense. I think I've kind of found the kind of style that I'm going for, which is maybe less technical. I've told some of my friends that I hope to be like almost like the Joe Rogan of podcasting, not in terms of the controversy, maybe a little bit, but mostly in terms of like the just asking like stupid questions to people and just interviewing whoever I want to interview. Like that's kind of like the dream for me, just to be able to have like any, streamer or grandmaster or just be like, hey, you want to talk anything with me for an hour and a half of my podcast? But with regard to the chess podosphere, I've noticed that one podcast, I don't know if you guys know the Adult Improvers, Dr. Skull podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to that one. I was on it a couple of months ago. That one has been so successful. I think like the Adult Improver podcasts, like where people who are trying to improve, having people like them come on a show and like talk about their struggles, improving the plateaus and all that. That seems like there's a way more of a market for that than for the, the kind of like chess interview, like, NBA style, which is kind of what I've been trying to do.
We noticed that with we've had Robin initially was a guest in January on one of our. We've had like 3 or 4 Adult Improver episodes, I think, and that run with Robin in particular gained a decent listenership. So while we do enjoy doing the stupid stuff occasionally, when we do serious stuff, it has gone quite well.
Right.
That's that makes sense though, right? Because I think a lot of people get into chess with a few people who are into chess don't play themselves, right? Like basketball is a sport where a lot of people, or football, right? Many people will watch and they never actually play and stuff. Whereas generally speaking, an interest in chess coincides with playing. And chess is a sport where everyone does feel like they can improve to a certain degree. Like once you get to John, speaking as you're a seasoned sort of a Sunday league, etc. footballer for a long time, right? And it's played to like a decent standard, but you understand, right, that you're sort of not going to improve that much at a certain point. Whereas chess, that doesn't, chess, the mindset is very much about going. So I think getting an insight into how people in similar situations are improving, it makes sense that would appeal. Whereas it just is not necessarily something that's known for having like the biggest, most exciting personalities and stuff. So you can see why fewer people may be tuning into, Ben or otherwise is kind of interview stuff compared to the Adult Improver stuff, which is I think one of the things that contrasts chess with a lot of other sports.
Yeah, definitely. I also, but I will say one thing. I'm getting a little I feel like there's way too much focus on adult improvement. Like I think chess is a game for me at the end of the day. And the moment that it becomes something that you like, I know everybody says I don't care about elo. We all care about our elo and whatnot. I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about people who like tweet like crazy about like, oh, I missed a mate in 6. Like, yeah, we all suck at chess. Like that's fine. You know, like I would hate like, and maybe this ties in nicely into like the psychology of chess and Nepo, which I'm sure we're going to get to, like, but just like, you're going to always be your harshest critic when it comes to that. And I just think that like, I would hate to see like the chess podosphere or Twitterosphere become like a place where people are just like in this like vacuous hole of like doubt and stuff. Like at the end of the day, it is a game. You should also just be playing to have fun. If all you care about is improvement and you're forgetting that like it is still a game, like that's what, with a Sunday league, when you're not going to improve that much, but you're playing with all your buddies and you have goals, like that's to me is a lot more fun than when you're just like binging 10 hours of chess.com and watching your rating go like this because you're like pushing for some arbitrary goal. So
yeah, I think a lot of, you mentioned sort of the elitism in chess, and it's viewed as this kind of like a sort of cerebral intellectual sport. I think a lot of people, I think there's certainly a category of people who get into chess kind of for that reason, because they view it as a way of sort of proving some kind of ideas about their own sort of like intellectual prowess or whatever, and they see chess as kind of a vehicle to do that. And as you said there, like it's all about sort of improving. Like clearly, like you obviously you want to improve. You should want to improve because you want to get better at this game that you love, not improve because you feel like you have to sort of prove anything to anyone. Because ultimately, right, what are you eventually going to prove? Everyone's going to hit a ceiling at some point, and it's not like, unfortunately to everyone out, all the adult improvers out there, that ceiling is not going to be the 2022 World Championships against Magnus.
Right.
So
exactly. And also, like, the other thing is, if you have a job or a podcast or all these other things,
a job
like,
or a podcast
or both,
yeah, they're mutually exclusive. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, listen, for me,
the dream.
I mean, I don't know how much time you guys. I put a lot of time into my podcasting, and I'm really shocked, like how much work I put into it, and it's the return is so little too. So it's like, I mean, I have listeners. I'm very grateful for my listeners and sponsors and all that. But it really, I'm not like, it doesn't feel like a job, but I still put in like, 10, 15 hours a week into this thing. So way too much time on Twitter. So anyway,
maybe we should consider putting any effort into this podcast.
I think if we ever go for a name change, I think your suggestion of "We'll Suck at Chess" would be quite a good title for a podcast.
That would be a good one, actually. That's yeah. I might.
In terms of just coming back to the idea of like the fact that chess is often watched by players. This is something that I've written about quite a bit in my newsletter this World Championship, because I do feel as though, I mean, obviously it's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because like by watching and following chess, you are by dint of the fact that you're following chess becoming better at chess, and so there's an extent to which following chess as a casual fan is kind of chess improvement in a certain weird way. I mean, obviously it's not the most efficient way of being a chess learner, but I do think that what chess needs to realize is that there is a huge niche for an audience of casual fans who aren't going to sit down and learn the opening of the Grunfeld and the various lines in it. But there are, you can go a long way. I've enjoyed this World Championship to a fairly like decent theoretical degree with my probably around 1500 ELO. So like why should we not aim for audiences that are out there who want to be able to enjoy the culture of the game? Because I do think that there is a really interesting, and that's kind of why we set up this podcast, right? It was to make a space for people who are going to be casual chess fans, potentially, to enjoy chess. And I think that's kind of where I want to see chess going, is that, yeah, obviously keep up the sort of content that we've already had for years now, for people who want to be adult improvers, for people who want to really get into the weeds of what's going on a chessboard. But there has to be a space as well, right, for these more casual fans, and presumably that audience is a much bigger audience, right? Of people who will just sort of tune in every time there's a World Championship every 2 years and want to sort of follow what's going along.
No, you're on the money. Like, and I think that, like, I love Chessable, for example. I talked about this recently on my last podcast episode. Every time you get an email from Andrew from Chessable, it's going to be for some opening lifetime repertoires. It's like, well, crush this in 5 moves. Oh, you're going to be the best player ever. That's not freaking practical. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you know, you have to I don't know, like these kinds of lifetime repertoires. I mean, these are things that like grandmasters use, and they get marketed to people like us. And, you know, I'm not saying you can't learn from them. I certainly have. But like, I wish that there was more content, like you said, and more opportunities for people at our level. Like for example, like Lichess has this. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at this. Maybe this might interest you. They have this like Bundesliga that I just found out about like 3 days ago, where you create a team with your friends, you create a club, and you go and you compete against other leagues, the online league. It's like, you know, they have like, I think it's a long blitz, like 5 minutes, I think. But you compete against other people, you get promoted and demoted, just like in any other, like, you know, let's say it's a British OTB league or something. There needs to be more stuff like that that's popular. Okay, online, I understand there's cheating and whatnot, but that's like a huge opportunity. If you had something like that, like in an esportsy kind of way, that's like such a massive opportunity to get people into the game. And like, but then there's the other side of the coin. Like, I feel like, you know, there's most of the focus on this high end, top levels of chess. But I just think that that's like a massive opportunity to get new people to just play with their friends, play team chess. And I'm kind of curious, like, why that isn't more popular.
I think part of it is just like any sport, right? The people who attract the interest are going to be the best players, right? People are, you know, when they're looking at the chessable courses, they're naturally attracted to stuff which is by, you know, the super GMs, right? If you look at the costs of the courses, right, that definitely does. There is a sort of correlation between how strong the player is and how and that's not necessarily sort of appropriate, like as you say, appropriate for sort of an improving player, right? Because like the best stuff on Chessable, I think, for a lot of sort of earlier players are going to be people like Andras Toth, for example, is a really excellent chess teacher, but because he doesn't have the sort of he's absolutely brilliant at explaining
control descenta.
Yeah, exactly. That's his but then people will, it's crazy. People are splashing out like a lot of money on stuff, which is, you know, like really, obviously it's great content from the sense of like, these are going to be sort of like really, really critical cutting edge lines in, you know, whatever opening it is. But part of Chessable's problem is that it is like, the medium is like so well tuned towards opening.
It's all openings. It's 90% open. You can't use it for anything else. And that's like that's why I stopped learning openings. Well, now I'm relearning my openings. But I mean, I was all throughout the pandemic, I was grinding openings. I did like my little aim chess thing. Like my opening level was like 2300, 2400. Like I was like memorizing these lines. But then I get into middle game and I freaking suck. Terrible. Because, you know, okay, you have the book. The book gets you to move 10, 15 all the time. And you're getting these dream positions. And then oh, wait, I don't actually know how to play chess. And then I'm losing. And, you know, what the book says, like black is in a better position. Okay, but I don't know how to play chess anymore. So like, how do you? So that's kind of like where I had. Now I'm grateful. I have a coach. I think that's the smartest thing that I've been doing coaching since I started playing chess. Through lead chess coaches. I could talk about that, like how when I started and all that, if you guys are interested. But like, but yeah, I mean that's been great for me because that's the kind of stuff that I can train without a Chessable course. Although that costs a lot of money too.
Chess is like a triathlon, right? And if you just get really, really good at swimming, but then you don't actually know how to ride a bike, like you're going to be in trouble.
Exactly. And then end games.
Yeah.
I'm you know, I don't ever want to have to get to a point in chess where I need to sit down and read for the end game manual. I do not have time for that. I never will. That's what I was trying to say before. When you have a job or a podcast, like you don't have, there's a certain point where you just will not improve because the amount of hours you need to put in to get another 100 elo is going to be more than you have in your day-to-day life. Like you have to take a break. And that's not saying that, you know, anybody can't become a GM, but the reason why people are GMs is that, you know, they literally work on chess 10 hours a day when they're kids. You can't do that as when you're an adult. I mean, most people can't. That's a huge dedication. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about but I think that's why like the adult improver sphere, that's I think where all the big podcasting opportunities are. But I'm personally just not that interested in improvement.
People think that there's going to be some kind of panacea, right? They're going to be like, oh, I'll listen to this podcast and my elo is going to go up 200 rating points and everything's going to be great. And obviously that's never the case.
One thing I talk about a lot in my coaching is objectivity versus practicality. So yeah, you were saying you can go down this line that's like, you can know the first 14 moves of Grunfeld or whatever. But then if you don't know what's going on next, then so what? And this is, in terms of teaching people openings, I'm going for stuff they can just kind of get a rough idea of what they're doing, 5 or 6 moves. Something like the French is very easy to teach. You don't need to like worry about particular responses. You just go E6, D5. Yeah, maybe they take, but you're trying to get in C5, whatever, etc. And I think that's what we've kind of done on this podcast as well. Is certainly what I've been aiming to do throughout our 2 years is come at chess from this wider cultural perspective to encourage people to kind of see it within a wider cultural perspective, so that it's no different from any sport, right? I mean, as we've said, you don't get into football unless you watch football, probably.
I can't imagine you like listening to FBL podcasts and like not ever like watching Premier League ever. That would just be weird, right? Like,
I mean, I know people who are doing better than me in FPL who have no interest in football just because they read the Scout every week. But I mean, that's a different kind of thing. But just in terms of there's this wider cultural thing where chess. Why wouldn't, if you're playing chess, why wouldn't you want to know? I mean, we've done historical bits for the last 2 years as well, and tried to put chess in this wider context of life. And I think that's something that is definitely missing, as you say. There's no real joy, is there, to a chessable course in your life? It's joy for your chess, but that's about it. Whereas if you can get this wider perspective, then absolutely you're going to, I think, just enjoy the game more and want to do more and see more and get to know the personalities and all of this.
That's why I've been always raving about this book. I loved it so much I brought it with me to Denmark. It's called the NonFiles. And it's about the Anon's World Championships, the 3 of them. I had the author of the book come on my podcast a while ago. It was like a dream interview to be able to do that, because I just love this book so much. I'm taking it so slow because I really save it for when I just want to sit down and it's exactly what you said: chess culture, chess history. It's that kind of book. It's not a book about crushing someone with the elephant gambit or whatever. It's like
never happened ever.
Yeah, never. But my point is that to me is what matters more. That's why I'm interested in podcasting. That's also like the kind of content I want to make down the line is like kind of more like let's say documentary style, like chess videos, not about openings or the games, but about chess history, about like chess characters, about that kind of stuff. Because I think the chess is so rich, both as a game itself in terms of strategy, of course, but also in terms of the history. I mean, just if you want to just go down a rabbit hole, read about like chess in World War II and just learn about Alekhine and how the whole World Championship scenario, like, and all these failed matches, and how that's so fascinating. Like, you can't really, there's no other sport has been like that except for chess. It's been, as a professional thing, has been around longer than so many other sports that we watch today. So that's exactly what you said. I care a lot more about the culture, and I care a lot more about sharing that than about improvement, because I'm going to do my own improvement at the end of the day. What works for me is not going to work for other people, and it is what it is.
It's all about finding what you love in chess, right? That's the thing, like you said, right? It might be just that you dive in, you have a favorite world champion or whatever, for whatever abstract reason they are your favorite, and then you can just sort of go and learn about them, and there will always be sort of rich, interesting things about sort of the stories of their life. And because chess has been so intertwined with politics and sort of in particular the Cold War, right? There's like, and that's in itself a tremendously interesting topic. I think the same is true actually also for playing. I think that what John said about people are always looking for a panacea, right? Openings always seem like that, because it's like you can completely control that part of the game, right? Like, you're always going to get. So you might study an end game and then just not get it on the board because the game you play doesn't lead to that. But you can always sort of, so people think, right, I can just learn this opening and that's what I'm going to do. And it kind of misses the sort of point, which is that I think you need to find the bits of chess like play that you love as well. I think you talked there about sort of not wanting to study end games. I think that's a bit of this sort of hatred of studying end games, I think, is a bit of is said by people who don't study end games. I think generally, like, once you start studying end games, you find that they're like, you spent ages like trying to work out why it is the case that this seemingly counterintuitive thing works, or vice versa. Like, the most sort of natural move in the world completely doesn't work. It's a sort of like beautiful, weird kind of like what's his name? Is it Escher? it's like the sort of Escher paintings of chess, right? Like that, these sort of stairs that lead to nowhere, seemingly,
or to themselves. Yeah,
MC
no,
Escher,
that's a great point.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
And stuff, and so and it's only then, and similarly that's with openings, right? It's not necessarily, it shouldn't be about like, you know, you've got to learn sort of I don't know, pick a Wesley So's sort of like line in the Spanish or whatever, that down to like move 19 against the Breyer variation, right? That's it. It's like you like openings because, as Phil says, you like the ideas in them, right? You play the French, and it's got this very sort of obvious sort of strategic plans, and it's like when it goes well, it's just, you really get, this is just like a great game in the French, and it's not because I knew it up to move 25, it's because I understood the ideas and I enjoyed playing it. So I think sort of in that way, chess practicality mirrors chess life, and that it's all about, you can get so many different things from the game, and it's all about finding kind of what you want from it.
I mean, I agree, and I'm kind of like full of crap too, because I consider myself a very serious adult improver. Actually, I mean, I've spent so much time and money on this stupid game. Right, I'm redoing all my openings now. I'm playing D4 for the first time. My rating has gone like this because like I'm playing new things completely with black and white, just completely trying to reinvent myself as a chess player. It's been a very hard task. I spend way more time on chess than I should, like, considering I have a job. Like I'm here like for a research job, like for a few months, and I spend way too much time on chess, but I love the game that much. I think it's good to be an improver. I just think that I think that people should come into chess and not get so lost in the weeds about all these people who are like me trying to neurotically improve. It should be more about kind of also enjoying the culture and the podcasts and the history and the videos. And that's, I think, what needs to move on. I want to see a big, you know what I like about basketball in America? And I'm sure it's like this with football/soccer in England, right? Like the whole production around it. This was the first time with this championship that I really saw this in chess. But I love the whole production of, being able to go to a bar and watch the games with your friends, or like, putting on in the morning when you're getting ready for work and having like Stephen A. Smith yell about the Warriors. Like that's the kind of stuff that I would love to see like in the chess world. Like I want weird characters like that. I want that kind of messiness and controversy. I want that big like media hubbub around chess. I don't think it's necessarily a good thing, but I guess my point is, if we get to that point, it's going to mean that chess is insanely popular and a lot of people are interested. And I think that in the long term, that's going to be great for the OTB scene around the world. I think it's going to be great for just people getting into a really rich game, and hopefully will bring a lot of new sponsors. So I hope that I could be that kind of, I don't want to be the Stephen A. Smith of chess, don't get me wrong. But I that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my podcast. I kind of want to just talk to people about the game, the culture, people who are players, people who are commentators, people who are streamers, and try to get that kind of feel. I talk about improvement too, of course, but that's I guess where I'm at with my podcast.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree with that. I think that the notion of chess being so much more rich than I think a lot of the time it's given credit for, and I think that's partly because, as we've talked about, the elitism, this idea that you have to be cerebral to enjoy chess, the idea that you need to understand everything that's going on in order to enjoy chess, as though anyone who watches football actually really understands what goes on behind the scenes in the coaching and tactics and etc. side of things. But let's move on, because I think there's a nice segue here, which is, you've talked about enjoying the culture and history of the game. How do we think that this World Championship is going to go down in culture? Like, obviously we can talk, you mentioned already, the Annan files. You can go back and look at Annan's World Championships, and that they're in the past. They are a historical artifact. How do we think that this World Championship will go down as a historical artifact?
I think it'll be forgotten.
I wouldn't go that far, but definitely it's the most forgotten. I think that
more forgettable, certainly.
Yes, forget it. Yeah, that I mean, I think it's going to be memorable for Nepo putting up a really poor performance. I think it's also like, you can starkly contrast it with the fact, I actually think that Nepo's prep throughout the match actually was probably a little better than Magnus's, in my opinion. I think even when Magnus was in his positions that he prepped, Nepo would just kind of find one or two moves, and then Magnus was out of prep. And they were like always the best moves. Like, what comes to mind, for example, is like game 6, the opening in game 6, for example, where Magnus had this like pawn stack prepared, and Nepo didn't accept it. And it's like, for some reason, Magnus was not prepped, because he took like half an hour after that to think about what to do. Maybe he was still in prep, but he was trying to make a new decision. But in any case, like, I thought that considering all of that stuff, like games 8 and 9 were just disastrous. I mean, there's such a small margin for error, and to kind of make one move blunders like twice is just like insane. So I think like the narrative is just going to be, you know, Magnus won convincingly against the. I really would think what it just says is that, I don't know, Magnus maybe just doesn't have an equal in the chess world right now. Maybe we need to wait 2 years for that. If so, so be it. But I think that's really the narrative that's going to be remembered, is just how strong Magnus is.
It was a poor match that contained one great game, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, Game 6 was like it clearly broke Nepo, right? So, you know,
yeah,
imagine. Have you guys ever played an 8-hour chess game before?
My longest is 7.
And how did you feel after that?
It was my first game against the Grandmaster, and I should have drawn after 6 hours. I missed a draw on move 60, the last move before the second time control, and then he ground me down over the 7th hour. I felt shattered, but he was kind enough to give me a post-mortem. I was 18 at the time. It was I learned a lot from it.
Yeah,
but I was absolutely destroyed. Yeah, I missed dinner.
I can't imagine. The longest game I've played was 2 hours. I haven't played that much OTB, honestly. I don't know what I would do. If I were in Nepo's shoes, I really don't know. I would like retire. Like I don't know how I would feel after losing like that. I mean, Nepo obviously has a lot more experience, and he's been in long games before. I'm sure that he's both won and lost. But man, I mean, that you know, to be on the other end of that is just hard. Like, yeah, that was insane though.
I've just had a horrible flashback to the time I played 4 NCL, lost in 3 hours, and then got the lucky chance to watch Leeds lose immediately to Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship. That was quite a low game. But yeah, I don't think I've done anything for 8 hours straight. Not even sleep. I don't even think I've slept for 8 hours in a row. So yeah,
I played 10 hours of chess the other day, actually. 10 hours of rapid games, and like lost 150 ELO points like in a day. I should not have done that, but I was just on full tilt, and I had fun. I had fun losing that much. I don't know what to say. It was exhilarating because I was losing games, but one of the games I lost, I had 2 brilliant moves on chess.com. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. You know, whatever. Nothing feels better than that.
One thing we should say,
Shakespeare's monkeys and their typewriters.
One thing we should say is that yesterday FIDE confirmed the schedule for the next cycle. So we were thinking it was going to be March for the candidates, and then this time next year for the next match. Yesterday, Dvorkovich confirmed it's going to be summer 2022 candidates, and then early 2023. So not like 2 years fully, but it's going to be more than a year until the next match. So yeah, it's going to be 2023, but it's going to be early in 2023. So that was confirmed yesterday by the FIDE president.
That makes sort of sense, I think, rather than if we've lost a year, right, and you've got sort of the next 3 years where you would have had two world championships, it probably makes sense to sort of split the difference and kind of have slightly shorten 2 cycles and put 2 into 3 years rather than 1 into 1 year. That probably makes sense, and they'll probably then aim to get back to a normal cycle for maybe then like a late 2024 world championships might make sense.
What it does mean is that Nepo's got more of a break now before the candidates than we might otherwise have assumed. So that's definitely something that he'll need before he competes and tries his best to qualify again.
Yeah, and this is the topic that I kind of wanted us to shift towards. Like, where does Nepo go from here? We've talked about how this World Championship is going to be remembered mainly for his collapse. What is going to happen to him? I mean, we've seen players like, I guess, Sergei Karyakin lose a World Championship not badly, and that seemingly impact his career. What do we expect from Nepo? What does the future look like for him?
It's hard. It's really hard to say because, first of all, I mean, I don't know what his, a lot of people want to probe his mind right now and how he's feeling. I really don't know. I mean, it seems like at least in the press conferences, he's very like gentleman-like and he's very gracious, which I think is a good sign. I think really, like even with Karyakin kind of disappeared for a little. Not disappeared. He was still on the world stage, but he's been in amazing form.
I'd say he disappeared. I think you're right.
Yeah, but he had a kid and all this stuff, so I can't really blame him. But I mean, his recent performance in like the World Cup and a lot of recent events. I mean, he's my dark horse to win the candidates, actually, because he's in insane form. I think he was a second for Nepo, so I think he's kind of getting back into that mental. And I really would not be surprised to see him back there. Him or Caruana, I think, are like my favorites right now. I think for Nepo, like it really depends on a lot of things. I don't know what the Russian politics situation is. I just talked about this on like the recap I recorded like literally before this, but you have to imagine that like the Russian Chess Federation has literally poured like millions of dollars into his career now for him to have a chance at this world championship. Most people only get one shot. So they're not going to be investing in him as much going into the next candidates, like, because they have these team of 2,600 super creative 2,600 grandmasters in Russia who always work for the challenger, like Potkin, etc. But like, I think that where does he go from here? I mean, I guess try to run it back in the candidates, but again, like what some people have said in the commentary, like maybe he would have collapsed like this in last year's candidates after his loss to MVL, but he had a year break to recuperate and work on his openings and hire new people that he wouldn't have had if they had just done the whole thing in Yekaterinburg, like back in the start of the pandemic, like what is it, January 2020. So yeah, I don't know. It really depends on a lot, but one thing is clear, like if he does want to compete at this world championship level, he really needs to like work on the stability. Because that's something that, Magnus said this in an interview, like, if he's down 1-0, he's not going to give up. He knows that he has that resilience. He's been in that position before. And he said, like, Nepo has this proclivity in his career to kind of collapse after setbacks. And again, like, maybe that's a bit of an unfair criticism. Who am I to say that? It's just some nerd, like, 2000 rapid chess.com guy. But, like, just as an observation, like, I'm not sure he will win the candidates ever again. I really don't think so. I think that they're, the candidates is too hard to depend on that in your career. It's just way too hard of a tournament to win. And the field is going to be like super strong as always. So yeah, I don't really know, but I'm hoping that this next game, he just goes full. I told you that in DMs, John, I hope he goes full samurai. I just want to see him play some insane chess. He really has nothing to lose. If you're going to lose in style. Like, I'd rather see him lose in an absolutely insane position with sacrifices than see him lose because of a one-move blunder. That's kind of how I feel. So I hope that he plays something absolutely crazy tomorrow, like a King's Gambit or something. Just do something stylish. If you get a draw, then it's, you need to get 3 straight wins. And you that's not happening against Magnus. To get 3 wins against him in your career is a big deal. To get 3 wins against him in a match is impossible. And if he loses, so be it. He's in a horrible position. And if he wins, then he could just go for the same thing again the next round. And that would just make a really interesting match. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for from here immediately. Sorry for like the long rant.
No. I'm not an expert on the history of the candidates, but when was the last time we had consecutive winners of the candidates in that way?
And no, Anand was champion and then requalified.
Fortunately, in the 80s.
Yeah, Karpov.
And Karpov too, yeah.
Well, Karpov was different. I mean, Karpov occasionally got like a rematch, and then I think maybe Karpov 87-90 had to qualify. But
yeah,
he was seeded directly into the final. Yeah,
it was BS.
Candidates.
Yeah. It wasn't BS. It was different back then because Karpov and Kasparov were so clearly ahead. Like, that's also something I kind of think, like, if we're being honest, right? Like, Nepo, as good as he has much of an improvement as he had in the last year, I still don't think he's at the same level as Caruana, for example. Like, honestly, and I said this on my last episode, I think the only person in the chess world right now who could actually go toe-to-toe with Magnus in a match is Fabiano Caruana. And I kind of wonder how he's feeling seeing the challenger after him just like completely blowing chances. And, how he feels, because Caruana certainly doesn't get the respect he deserves for, going 12 straight with Magnus. I really feel that way. Especially I remember the streaming on chess.com 3 years ago, they didn't have the nice sofa and the amazing commentary and all these guests. They had like just 2 people on a Zoom call for 8 hours. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, now there's a lot more attention. I'm sure a lot more people in America would care that there was an American challenger than back when he was there. And there was like one New York Times article at the back of the magazine about it. Like, so I don't know. I really want Caruana back there as an American. I really want him back. I think he would give Magnus like a really good fight, and he doesn't have the kind of same issues in like terms of stability that Nepo has.
Yeah, I mean, you say the coverage was poor in America. The match was in London, and it was just invisible. It was just in central London, and you wouldn't have known it unless you knew that it was in this random building in central London. It was mad.
But it's in Dubai now, but it's not its own thing. And I've always been upset about this since I realized that this is what it was. I wish that it was its own thing. Why is it part of some expo? Like, I understand there are a lot of tourists and whatnot.
Money.
But come on, I know,
The
like,
money.
but it's the World Chess Championship. Like, it should be its own thing. You know, you don't need an 80,000 seat venue for it, of course. But like, I don't know, as part of like a World Expo is, I don't know. To me, it's a little undignified.
All the
brings-
stars are there.
It brings this question to mind from Radio Martin, who says, I wonder to what extent the modernization, commodification, corporatization of this championship has contributed to its forgettability.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I think maybe overstated a little bit, but I do think that this is probably a bit of a breakwater in those terms, in terms of modernization, commodification, corporatization, and chess is clearly trying to do something. And what I found, again, something I've basically touched on a lot in my newsletter, has been that there's a lot of competing factions who are kind of trying to compete for the I don't know, whatever you would call it, the feel of chess or something. And you've got obviously FIDE on the one hand, who want to make it monetarily viable, but you've got a lot of people out there, I think, who care about chess a lot. A lot of people who are doing media stuff on it in various forms, who really want chess to I mean, from what we've been talking about today, like the stuff that we're talking about, how do we get more people interested in the game that we really enjoy? And it does feel very much like we're at a breakwater in that respect, where we're sort of competing for, like, how will people think about chess? And I guess the worrying thing is that when you do sort of shove it into an expo and you have all of these controversies about sponsorships and stuff, is that you start worrying that people will be remembering or thinking about chess for the wrong reasons rather than for the reasons that we've been talking about a lot.
Yeah,
we don't have a counterfactual of, like, what if we'd had this sort of corporatization of chess that we've seen for this World Championship, and it had also been a very sort of good competitive match throughout. Like, it's hard to say, it's very easy in hindsight to then say it's been for, you could pin why it's going to be forgettable on any number of reasons. Again, it's all just narrative. I do think that chess has a problem, and I think it's one that I'm not like a esports person, but any sort of like brief sort of glimpses I've got of sort of like esports is that it very much seems to be sort of taking on the affect of like kind of sort of Western style sort of big sports coverage, right? With like the sort of and I feel like chess is doing the same sort of thing, really. And it to a degree, it feels sort of artificial. I think it's about trying to, like, it's taking the trappings of existing sports and then just translating them into chess. And I think aspects of it work really, really well, and aspects of it do not. I think it's certainly I seeing the production values go up is certainly good, but then the way that if it's just trying to mirror like the Sky Sports studio or just mirror,
that's never going to work.
Existing, and so I think chess to a certain degree does have to succeed on its own terms. You need to, take those high production values, but use those to better translate the existing merits of chess, rather than attempting to just sort of create this kind of new culture which you're going to graft on artificially. And it's obviously a very fine line to tread, because at the same time, a lot of viewers will sort of find it easier to relate to something and get something from something that's more like something they already understand and already tune into, right? So certainly, like, they're not, no one would tune into a sort of basketball show that was just done sort of on like low quality sort of Zoom calls and stuff, where it's sort of in quite muted tones and whatever. And so it is good to see. And like John, you said you've followed a bit of the Hal Husker Chess 24 stream, right? And I think that they've done quite a good job for a lot of it in terms of translating it to a more sort of a more casual audience who want to follow the games without having to sort of dive into these really, really long variations and things like that. But at the same time, having people like Lawrence Trent on, where it just becomes this kind of like sports psychodrama about whether or not he's touched the knight and stuff like that, and sort of sensationalizing it too much really does step away from sort of the extent to which chess is dignified, really does get dramatically reduced by that. So I think there's a fine line to tread, and obviously the actors in this are so diffuse, right? You've got FIDE, who is obviously the organizer for all this stuff, but actually has very little say in terms of chess culture, right? Like, no one really interacts with FIDE. Certainly no casual fans, right? They will, have their favorite of chess.com or chess24 or whatever stream that they like watching, and that person will frequently have
other
nothing
outlets
to do
are
with FIDE.
available.
Yeah.
Well, FIDE is also like incredibly, like, not to disrespect Mighty FIDE, which follows me on Twitter, but FIDE is like just corrupt too, and has a huge history of corruption and money laundering for foreign governments. I mean, it's like the IOC, you know, nobody or FIFA, like nobody
Nigel
shills
Short's
for
a
FIFA.
prick and all.
Yeah, nobody shills for FIFA. You know what I mean? Like everyone knows that FIFA's a horrible. Like there's gonna be a World Cup in Qatar on slavery. Like, and that's just a thing that's gonna happen. Like, no, but you know, that's just part of it, I guess. Like, for me, you mentioned Lawrence Trent, and I actually was gonna say this. I thought that the Howell Hauska commentary crew with Kai Snar on the Chess 24 that was really good for the Rapid. I have to say, I have not been a fan when it's gone to 8 hours. I thought that I actually preferred, like, I haven't really checked Lawrence Trent that much, but I'll tell you, the last championship, the only one that I watched was the Jan Gustafsson, Lawrence Trent, that whole crew, because this is what happens in a world championship. Games will be 6 hours long, and it'll end up in a draw, and the game was boring the whole time. And then you'll have the what should happen is you have to treat that kind of thing as like a baseball game. It can also go really that long. And so what the commentary crews, the good ones, will do is they make it funny. They bring in a lot of pop culture references. They and I've been impressed by a lot of these crews that they figured that out. Like, there's going to be dry positions for half an hour. Make it fun. Make it funny. Interact with chat. Get in questions. Doing that kind of stuff is going to make it a lot more enjoyable. That's something that, for example, when I'm working at, whether I'm at the university where I work or at home, I can just have it on in the background. Magnus won't make a move for half an hour. That's not exciting from the Sky Sports standpoint. That's never going to be exciting. It's not, it's like in a soccer game, when there's those, when it's just like 10 minutes or just back and forth, like a weak shot into goal, but nothing's really happening. It's like a kind of war of attrition. What do the commentators, the good commentators that aren't American, do? They're just quiet. They just say Messi, like they just say the names of the people. You let it bounce out. Colin commentator says some stuff. You have to find that balance. Chess doesn't know where that balance is. You mentioned esports. I think a really quick fix for all of this stuff to get a ton of money. If I were FIDE, I would find $1 million in some, oligarch's closet or whatever, find $1 million and have it purely for esports organizations. Say hire a team of 4 chess players, whoever you want around the world, and you compete for this. You make 4 things. People play on their computers, an online thing with FIDE, but for the esports organizations, people will go nuts for that. I feel like chess is so well suited as an esport. It's so well suited for that. Okay, online cheating is a problem. Of course, you have to deal with that. But when the pandemic started and they had this first Magnus Carlsen tour, I've never laughed harder than when I saw there were some tweets about the final, Magnus Hikaru, and then someone replied to Magnus, the soccer stands on Twitter, how they are. So someone responded to Magnus, L plus ratio plus Hikaru better. I never laughed so hard in my life. And why I'm mentioning this is I think there's so many fans right now, it's in that age, 13 to 25 or whatever, this age group that is just getting into chess randomly. You should keep them. You should try to keep them. Don't let them get bored. Make events for those people. Okay, if they're rapid events online, who cares? Getting people in the game now, they'll still follow the OTB stuff later. I don't see so that's the kind of stuff that I feel is so easy, but instead they just are hemorrhaging money on these tournaments that don't end up happening. For what? What's the point? Hold events right now and make money and get fans so you can have bigger events later. Back in the 90s, World Championship prize pools were $10 million. Kasparov, I think in his 93 match, whatever, I think the prize pool was actually 11 million or something insane like that. And now it's what, 2 million? What has inflation is not the problem here. I can tell you that much as an American, is not the problem. So, but FIDE is going to FIDE at the end of the day. I think FIDE is just run by a bunch of boomers who don't really know where to go from here. I kind of I wish that there were people. It's a problem in US chess too. A lot of there needs to be a new face to it now, younger people to take the next, and people don't really know where to go from here. So I don't.
It's many organizations which face some sort of period of growth, right? In the modern era, just don't really know what to do, and suddenly they're presented with these kind of opportunities and stuff like that, because it's just not that it's not something that they have. They basically, I mean, not that FIDE necessarily had the skills to discharge its duties in the previous sort of paradigm as well, but certainly they didn't have the sort of the skills needed for stuff like that, and so it is very much going to be about who can actually jump in and kind of seize the moment. I think your point about the studio, I think, was a valid one. I know that was a while ago, but just I do agree with you. The Svidler Gustafsson kind of that niche is certainly the best, right?
It's
We
perfect.
always compare it to test match special, right? Which is almost exactly the same tone, right? For the cricket, which
Fiddler is a big fan of the cricket, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense that his stream would be similar to test match special.
The Lawrence Trent specifically, I appreciate the idea of Lawrence Trent in that he's supposed to be someone who's like funny and you would want to like watch, just sort of talk and have a bit of kind of chat. But the issue is just Lawrence Trent is like really painful to like see speak for any length of time. And
I don't know. I've never, maybe I just don't watch him as much, but I at least like when I started playing chess, I liked watching him I always thought that he was enjoyable. I
think part of the Lawrence Trent thing is you kind of have to be British to understand why he's such a prick.
It's fair.
I think this sort of comes down to like the whole problem of how do you like market chess comes down to the fact that I think the chess powers have a bit of a loss of nerve. I don't think they believe that chess is entertaining for most people, and I think that's the problem.
You're right.
The problem is, right, kids will sit down and watch Twitch streams of people doing the most inane things, and sometimes that's them going around playing a first-person shooter. But like, I think a lot of the time, like people watch things like that because they have some sort of understanding of why what those people are doing is something that they couldn't do, assuming that it's sort of like high level stuff. And why could chess not be the same as that? If people are playing chess and then go watch these streams and realize that actually there's a level above here that is taking place, then why wouldn't they just sit and watch this stuff going on? And I think that's the problem is that the powers that be they have a loss of nerve about how entertaining chess could be, and as a result they try and make chess about not chess rather than focusing on the content of what it is that they have that is completely different to what a lot of these other places have as well. So
it's why people like watching, most of Hikaru's fans are just impressed at the fact because he's obviously just so quick, right? They like seeing him do all of his calculations really quickly, put all of his arrows on the board, and it's just like, wow, how does he do that, right? And stuff like that. And what you're saying about people not really viewing it as like it's like not having faith in your audience. It's just like how so much sort of television and cinema now is completely like, there's no sort of subtext, there's no subtlety,
right.
There's nothing.
Yeah, people think you're stupid
because it's talking down to its audience, right? And actually, obviously, the best, like the things that sort of truly transcend the medium and are the sort of the best are things which they challenge their audience and they trust that their audience is actually going to follow on and have some sort of put some sort of beyond surface level investment into it, right? And not just watch it while they're also on their phone on Twitter and also doing this, that, and the other, right? And so it's the same. The problem is this outside of chess and outside of like sports in general. Chess has to have some confidence in itself, right? That it has to believe that people are going to tune in for the game. And sure, you can like present the game better, right, with improved production values. But I think the point at which you start trying to sort of like just I don't know, treat your audience like, well, chess is boring, so we're going to have to do something else to keep them invested. I think you've already lost the battle. But
that's also why I think first of all, I have a couple of things. So first of all, with regard to TV, you're 100%. It has to do with the corporatization for sure. I mean, I think that's why the last season of Game of Thrones was so bad. More than anything, I think that they were just trying to pander to such a wide audience, and they just blanketly assumed that all of them were stupid, and they're bringing in people who are just getting into it the first time. And I don't know if you guys care about Game of Thrones, but I'm still traumatized by the ending of that show. It was awful. I mean, going back to chess, I've literally watched Hikaru since like day one of his streaming. Like I could tell you Hikaru Nakamura, for all his flaws or whatever, that a lot of people have this parasocial hatred for him, like they know him. I don't know him at all, but all I could say is, knowing that there was an American grandmaster who is just insanely good at blitz, and I've literally watched him on Twitch like since like the first few days that he started streaming. And so I can tell you that like the fact that he is as big as he is on Twitch for chess is insane. The fact that game 6, when Magnus was about to win, had like 150,000 people on the chess.com stream, that is crazy. We were bigger than like CSGO, League of Legends, Valorant. I mean, these are all esports. I'm not saying that the goal should be to compete with the esports. My point is that this is an audience of people who would watch chess over esports, what we consider high octane things. And I'll tell you why that is. In the amount of time that a successful League of Legends player finishes their career, that's the amount of time it takes for a young kid playing chess to go from like 0 elo to like 2200 or whatever. That's like from a 5-year-old becoming like an NM or something. The amount of work that people put into chess, like what I'm trying to say is the skill gap in chess is so freaking high. It's like football, right? Like a Sunday leaguer, and I don't know. I'm sure you guys were familiar, like when, what was it, like Tottenham played like this like 8th division team or whatever. Yeah, and Marine, exactly. And I remember watching that. Like you see like the serious difference between like semi-professional and, not to say that one is better than the other, like on a moral level or anything. But my point is that like that kind of work, that amount of dedication, like to get to such an enormous skill gap. I'm not talking about somebody who's playing an esport for 4 or 5 years and then it retires. I'm talking about someone who's literally dedicated their entire life to getting to a certain point. Like people do admire that. People do appreciate that. And like we said throughout this episode, chess is incredibly rich. It has a cultural impact. It has a cultural memory on both the Western and non-Western world alike. People are just interested in it because of how important it is to, it's been a metaphor for human beings. It's been used as a trite metaphor for global conflict. Everybody knows something about chess. So people are always going to be interested in it. And so I agree with you, Robin, completely. Like for some reason, FIDE thinks that either people who watch chess don't like watching chess, or people who don't watch chess won't ever watch chess. And that's just stupid. Like make more events, weird events, just make things that people will start watching, and then you grow it from there. And then I'm telling you, the sponsors will come. But you can't just be like, yeah, we're going to hire this breast implant sponsor that's incredibly shady to do the Women's World Championship. Oh, we need money. It's not our problem. When you've done absolutely nothing to even try, like to get new fans. Like no wonder you have to settle for that. Like of course, like it's just like. So yeah, I don't know. You hit it on the head though, Robin. Like you're completely right.
I think we should draw things to a close because we've gone a little bit longer than we expected, but I've had a really good time chatting with you, David. What's the best way for the people who are listening to this or watching this to catch what you're putting out in the chess world?
So for now, I have my podcast, so just follow me on Twitter, 64 Podcast. Subscribe to my podcast. I mostly do interviews. I would love to host you guys on my podcast, by the way. I could return the favor. Just let me know. I would love to be a lot of fun. So we can talk about that. My Twitter, David Vizgan, just my name. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm an astrophysicist. Like I'm starting a PhD next year. So I don't know. That doesn't interest as many people, but that's kind of what I work on day to day. That's why I'm in Denmark. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm gonna start a YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. Basically tease what we talked about, kind of stuff about chess culture, chess history, this kind of content I'm going to plan on making. So I've just downloaded some video making software. And I'm going to try to, I'm already writing a script right now for some cool stuff. So yeah, Denmark. I see someone in the comments to Denmark. Yep. Shout out. I'm in Copenhagen right now. I'm doing a Fulbright scholarship, cultural exchange between America and Denmark. So it's been great. I've been here for 3 months.
I feel like the USA is getting the good end of that cultural exchange.
I would agree, but it's been great for me because I don't know. I never really. I was here 2 years ago for a summer job. That's how I kind of got started on this whole thing. But what can I say? It opened my horizons to the way that America does and doesn't do things. A certain way, so that to say the least. So it's been great to be here. So yeah, if you want to learn more about my Denmark adventures, you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet about leads. Yeah, I should come down to Ubro Chess Club, as I see one of the comments. So I'm trying. I live in Oosterbro. I emailed I need to pay, but I'm actually planning on playing the New Year's thing there. So maybe I'll see you there, Gabrielson.
I really like the idea that there's some poor Danish chess fan who's like stuck in Montana right now. It's like that's sort of the sacrifice that had to be made so that David could get out to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Nah, maybe they're in New York or something. So
yeah, but it's been great having you on, David. And
sure.
I do feel as though this has been a long therapy session, which has ended with you complaining about the US, the country that you were born in yourself. So we worked our way up from the small things all the way up. So
I love America. I love America for all its problems, and I'm very proud to represent America here and on my podcast. But you know what? Therapy session. I agree, and we can do it again on my show. So thank you so much for having me, guys. I had a blast. And
pleasure.
Be well.
Marching on together. Phil, can you stick the Star Spangled banner on the end of this?
Spangled banger.
Yeah, Star Spangled banger.
Spangled banger would be another good name for a podcast, actually. No,
yeah.
And with that note, we should leave. It's been great having you on, David. As I said, Phil, Robin, always a pleasure having you both on as well. We'll be back tomorrow to cover the game tomorrow. We are pretty flexible with timing, so keep an eye on our Twitter at ChessPitPod to find out when we'll be. And yeah, do check out David's podcast. He, as he mentioned at the beginning of this, has an episode out with Greg Shahade, so that sounds like a good one to catch as well. So do head over there. So yeah, bye from us, and we'll see you tomorrow.